Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Arctic Wire Rope and Supply, an Alaskan company providing quality lifting and rigging products since 1983, manufacturing custom wire ropes, chains, and nylon slings here in Anchorage, on the web at arcticwirerope.com.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Alaska Weather across the state for your public, marine, and aviation forecast in just a moment. For now, I'm meteorologist Kimberly Hepner, and today is November 27, 2013. Just the day before Thanksgiving, so in just a moment we'll be talking about your Thanksgiving forecast and into Friday. All right, when we're not on air, you can always reach us at arh.noaa.gov on the internet, or you can get your weather information via information line on the telephone, 1-800-472-0931. And as always, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Now on to the important stuff of the day. We are going to look at a couple of watches and warnings that are out there for the southeastern areas, just from Haines and to the north and northwest. We're looking at a winter storm warning out here, and this is for snow amounts that are going to total between 6 and 12 inches. Again, that's north from Haines and north. And looking across the part of the eastern Alaska range and north through the upper Yukon Valley to Fort Yukon and north-south line from Fairbanks and eastward, we have a winter weather advisory for snow in these areas. They're expecting additional snow totals between for around 4 to 6 inches. Some areas have already seen around 2 to 3 inches, and we'll be talking about your weather in just a moment, so stay tuned. And here we go. We'll look at your satellite first and look at this impressive system out here in the northern Pacific. It's a well-formed comet cloud just south of Unalaska, and that's the central part of the Aleutians that it wraps back around this moisture too, and colder air just across the Bering in the darker gray colors. I'll put that in circulation one more time so you can take a second sneak peek at that feature. And then as we look closer to home, you'll see how this moisture is being pulled just to the north. You might see a break in this across the Gulf here, but there's mainly just lower clouds at the surface that this infrared satellite's not picking up on. So there's plenty of moisture still being pulled over towards the southeastern areas, as low pressure is mainly across the central Gulf Coast here, centered. And with a cold front we had moved in, you can see it slightly on the satellite satellite features here in the darker gray colors and the delineation right here between the lighter and darker colors. So I'll spin that in motion one more time, and you can look close to your area to see what might be affecting you in the next few days. So this colder temperature area is going and moving across, and taking a look at your map today to see where the surface features were. Well, we had a surface low across the interior parts of the state that was extending just to about the western part of the Gulf of Alaska. So the colder temperatures have made it through much of the southwestern areas, and we had low pressure that's lingering over the central Gulf Coast area, and this was bringing some rain showers across much of the southeast today. However, we're expecting the colder temperatures to move in behind this, especially within the nighttime hours. So light showers along the eastern parts of the Gulf Coast and quickly turning into snow showers and moving around this low pressure system. So parts of south central are still seeing some light shower activity just in time to make the evening commute kind of a challenge. All right, looking north, we'll have all these snow showers. They're slow to move up and through the state, so we're going to have a prolonged duration of these snow showers, and with a moist air mass just continuing to be pulled up through the area, expect snow amounts to be very moist, and that'll give us the big dendritic flakes that are going to fall across the Fairbanks area and just north. Along the Arctic coastal areas, the cold front had already passed through much of the area, so just light snow showery conditions noted across here through the Seward Peninsula, and high pressure across the Bering is moving in across the eastern parts of the Bering into the southwest, and this has kind of dried things out, some low cloud covers, and most of the rain is staying just to the south of the central Aleutians with that low that we just saw a moment ago on the satellite. And now this high pressure is a very strong ridge, and it's going to continue to build into the Bering. So that'll keep this low pressure system from having any effect on the Alaska Peninsula. But looking further to the north, where the isobars along this frontal area, we'll see increased winds across the western coast by tomorrow evening. So along the Kenai and Kodiak areas, we'll see winds with the offshore flow increasing as we head through your Thursday forecast. But for now, so be on a lookout for that overnight. They might pick up as early as tonight. And then low pressure across the northwest will continue with showers along this area overnight. And with the low pressure across the central Gulf Coast not moving anywhere, it's just going to continue to bring the moisture on into the southeast back towards the south central areas. So we'll see the heaviest snow amounts occurring in the overnight hours tonight. So the winter storm warning in this area is going to be out from this eve. It's already in effect through 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. The snow across the eastern parts of the state is in an advisory until Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Looking to the northwest, we'll expect snow with weak low pressures continuing across the area. And then across the southwest, as I had mentioned, they're going to be on the drier trend on into your Thursday. So on Thursday, low pressure staying south of the chain still, and another one developing out ahead of it. In the meanwhile, this low pressure system continuing through tomorrow, and here's the gradient in the isobars, which is going to help the northerly flow just come flowing off the Gulf coastal areas, and expect on later into Thursday across the Prince William Sound with winds gusting between 40 and 60 miles per hour and possibly higher. And then looking across the interior parts of the state, lighter winds here, showery conditions with weak low pressure, but not a whole lot going on here. So mainly tomorrow the focus is going to be on the heavier showers that may occur across the southeastern areas with mixing with snow as you get into the higher elevations around 2,000 feet and higher. And across the Bering, expect some patchy fog across much of the area, and the Aleutian chain in rather benign conditions with partly cloudy, well, mostly cloudy skies with the lower clouds that are coming up ahead of this next system. Looking on into your Friday forecast, high pressure will continue to build across the Bering, so not much to mention here, just the windy conditions that are going to pick up all along the Gulf coastal areas. Winds will be gusting between 20 and 30 miles per hour at least across the Sound and further towards the east. Across the southeast, we have a boundary that'll still be in the area, so expect continuous showers through the end of the week across the southeast. And then snow showers will still be possible across the areas in the east, but they'll taper off slightly as drier conditions move in with the colder air mass that's going to be setting up across the state. Higher pressure will also build across the northwestern areas, so mainly across the far eastern areas they'll see the lighter snow showers. Now taking a look at your temperatures today, the warmest temperatures were in the southeast as the front moved inland, and we had 51 degrees at Sitka with much of the other parts of the area sitting in the mid-40s. Along the central Gulf coastal areas, still just above freezing in the mid-30s, and then as you move north towards Eagle, saw temperatures in the single digits, and actually, in the lower teens across actually in the lower minus teens across the interior areas with minus 29 at Arctic Village. And then very cold along the Arctic coast, typical but just below normals for this time of the year, with temperatures near minus 20 in some parts. And then along the northwestern coasts, as you wrap around, mainly in the single digits, but some areas creeping up into the teens. Across the southwest, we saw temperatures in the lower lower 20s to mid-teens all across the Kuskokwim Valley and Delta areas and back towards the Bristol Bay. This is where the biggest temperature gradient was, between 16 and going up to the upper 30s across the Alaska Peninsula. Pribilof sat right around the freezing mark, with the rest of the chain in the mid to upper 30s. As we look at your forecast temperature lows for tonight, temperatures will be in the mid 30s across much of the Aleutians, with a little bit colder temperatures over the Alaska Peninsula in the upper 20s, and across the southern parts of the state, mainly in the single digits, quickly changing to below zero as you go up towards the northeast, where the cold pool is sitting across the upper Yukon Valley areas, just below the eastern Brooks Range. Along the coast, expect temperatures to mainly drop across the central and western Gulf Coast in the lower to mid 20s, and then along the southeastern areas, mainly in the mid 30s overnight tonight for you. And then as you get towards Haines, of course, this is where the changeover near the Canadian border was right around that freezing mark. Looking at your temperatures for highs tomorrow, warmest across the southeast, upper 30s to lower 40s, and along the coastal areas in the mid-teens to mid-20s. Much colder temperatures across much of the state for tomorrow, just below zero in many locations. Along the southwest, warmer, a little bit warmer here in the upper teens to lower 20s. And then across the Alaska Peninsula through the chain, expect temperatures in the low 30s to low 40s. For your flying weather conditions, IFR to MVFR across much of the state, with a little bit of a break across the southwest where high pressure is building in. Expect IFR conditions across the southeastern parts of the state and east, and also across the western coastal areas. Looking at your pass conditions, Anaktuvuk Pass will be IFR to MVFR, and then we're expecting Adigan to stay IFR all day, with very reduced visibilities across that area. MVFR to VFR conditions as it clears out across Lake Clark and Merrill passes, and Rainy Pass MVFR to VFR. Looking at Windy Pass MVFR, and Isabel Pass will be MVFR. Mentasta will be IFR all day, and then Tanita Pass will be IFR to MVFR. Portage Pass will also be MVFR all day, and Chilcoot and White Pass, of course, IFR in these areas. And looking at your freezing levels tomorrow, surface freezing level just off the coastal areas and back towards the northern Bering, with a 2,000 to 6,000 feet across the southern parts of the Gulf and towards the Dixon entrance, and 2,000-foot level just south of the Aleutian chain. Looking at your icing for tomorrow, mainly across the western areas near St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island, expect some moderate conditions in this area. Below 10,000 feet across the eastern areas of this state, with possible widespread moderate conditions around that low pressure system in the central Gulf Coast, and below 8,000 feet along the western areas. Looking at your jet stream, we have a split flow over the Bering and the northern Pacific, with ridging over the Bering Strait at 110 knots, and then a very amplified pattern as you move towards the east, with ridging across the Alaska-Canadian border. Looking at your 9,000-foot winds for tomorrow, strong winds across the southwestern areas into the western Gulf, with the strongest across and westerly at 25 to 50 knots across the Gulf waters. Looking at the northern parts of the state, an easterly flow between 20 and 30 knots, with the Bering having a change of direction around this ridge around 20 to 30 knots across the Bering. Looking at your 3,000-foot winds, looking at that ridge again across the Bering, change of direction and winds here, with the strongest winds across the southwestern parts of this state, and then along the Gulf waters at 35 knots for 3,000 feet, and then across the southeast between 15 and 25 knots out of the southwest. Lighter conditions across the northern parts of the state out of the northwest at 25 knots. Looking at your turbulence for tomorrow, mainly below 5,000 feet along the western coastal areas, and below 5,000 feet along the southeast. Along the chain, watch for occasional to widespread conditions for turbulence across the Shelikof Strait and the Barren Islands area, just coming off that southwestern area, and then below 6,000 to 8,000 feet here. All right, we'll be back in just a moment with your marine forecast.
good. We got Mount McKinley in the background, and you're looking real good. Yeah, Roger. We'll be going downhill, dragging it down, and then take a look at the tracks and feel the snow, and then possibly land. Okay, well, I'll circle over you and keep an eye on you. I'll mark you down. Okay, we'll be breaking off underneath you. Okay, we'll stay up. And usually I go through a gump, the word gump, meaning gas, undercarriage, prop, mixture, prop, gump. G-U-M-P, and that generally gets me set up for landing. So my gas is on both tanks, my undercarriage is in the ski position, locked. My mixture at this altitude should be about 15 GPH at this setting. I know the elevation of the glacier is where we'll be landing is about 7,000. The light is good, but we don't have any sunlight right on the spot. We'll be coming in high, taking a go over, drag our skis, take a look at it, get a feeling for the depth of the snow, and then turn around. If the snow doesn't feel like it's too deep, we'll turn around and land. This also gives us a feel of the glacier of how it's rolling. That's okay. We're just feeling the snow out is what we're doing here. Feels like we got a good snow pack. It's all right. We've got probably about a foot of snow or so on top of a hard pack, so we're not going to disappear into the powder or anything. How does it feel, Doug? Yeah, it feels good, Lowell. We've got about, feels like about a foot of snow on there on top of a good pack. I think it'll be real good. I'm going to go on in and land, and it looks like they got a big hole there where somebody was camping. And we'll mark that and probably pull up there. It seems like a good flat spot. Okay, well, I'll come in after you. I'll notice that hole. I'll be sure to miss that one, too. Okie doke. So we're on final Southeast Port. Okay, I see you. This is the touchy part now, because now on our way in, there's no chance for a go-around. You're just going straight in. All right. I lost my reference. We're going to have to go by and drop those bags off. We'll need you to hold the bags real tight and try to hold your hand outside the window. And then when I say now, towards the bottom of the hill there, that's where we'll have to drop them at the bottom. That'll give me a reference. Go ahead and throw them both out at the same time, and that'll give me a line also. Okay, now.
I think he probably blew his hat clean off, I think. I think you can wait in here if you like. We probably won't be here much longer. Yeah, watch the door so it won't. Matter of fact, could you shut this one so it won't blow? Okay, that's good. You wouldn't think about it, but one of the more important factors would probably be just a real good shovel. If you ever need a shovel, you'll want a good one. Sometimes the cheap, lighter models that are easy to pack will break or fail on you. It's real important to have a good snow shovel when you're going into these areas and operating on skis. Sometimes you really need it and you want it to work for you.
All right, welcome back to the show, and we're going to take a first look at your sea ice edge across the state. Of course, the Arctic areas are all encased in ice, and back towards Kotzebue Sound, this is all ice along the coastal areas, and on across the southwestern, just some new ice developed in the Bristol Bay areas, and along the Cook Inlet, there's some icing that has begun across the Turnagain and Knik Arms. All right, looking at your southeastern forecast for Thursday, expect primarily a south to southwest wind, small crafts all across the area, and the seas will be between 4 and 6 feet in the inner channels and along the outer waters between 10 and 11 feet. And then for your Friday forecast, expect very similar wind speeds across much of the inlet at 25 knots, small craft advisory, and small craft advisory across the northeastern part of the Gulf. Elsewhere, 20 knots all out of the south and southwest. Seas across the inner channels between 4 and 5 feet, and along the outer waters between 10 and 11 feet. Looking at your south central forecast, stronger winds will develop across the Barren Islands area and across Shelikof Strait with storm force winds on your Thursday. And just below or just south of Kodiak, we're expecting gales 35 knots. Elsewhere across the Gulf waters, expect 25 knots, small craft. All winds are going to be out of the northwest. And then just lighter wind speeds initially across the Cook Inlet and the Prince William Sound areas, but gusts are going to be in this area around 30 knots as we get later into the day. Seas across the Prince William Sound area 3 feet, and then the Western Gulf between 8 to 19 feet actually, and then along the Cook Inlet and south expect seas between 6 and 15 feet with the highest seas near the Barren Islands, and north in the Cook Inlet looking at 3 feet. Your Friday forecast, winds are going to stay strong across much of the area and pick up across the Prince William Sound and become more persistent. Small crafts across the northern parts of the Gulf, storm force winds across the Barren Islands, and gales across the Shelikof Strait and south of Kodiak Island. Looking at your Thursday forecast for the Bristol Bay area and Alaska Peninsula, 20 to 30 knots out of the north to northeast direction, with seas 6 to 10 feet across the Bristol Bay area and 11 to 13 feet on the Pacific side. Your Friday forecast, northerly winds between 20 and 35 knots, gales across or just south of Kodiak, and small craft advisories further to the west. Seas between 5 and 10 feet across much of the area, with slightly higher seas around 12 feet as you get closer to Kodiak Island. And then northeasterly flow all across the Aleutian chain between 25 and 40 knots, with the strongest winds across the central Aleutians. And then seas here will be between 11 and 15 feet on the Bering side and between 16 to 20 feet along the Pacific. On your Friday forecast, expect very similar winds across the area except out of the east and southeast, with winds between 25 and 30 knots, small craft across the area except towards Shemya, where gale warning at 35 knots. Seas here will be between 10 and 15 feet again this day on Friday. And Thursday, expect winds to be out of the northerly direction for much of the area to west, and then seas will be between 5 and 6 feet with a northeasterly flow just near the St. Paul Island. Small crafts as you get towards the Nunivak Island area. On your Friday forecast, expect the strongest winds out just south of the St. Matthew Island area, or around the St. Matthew Island area, and winds will be primarily out of the north and west once again, and seas will be between 5 and 6 feet. As we look at your waters, well, actually your frozen waters across the northwest and Arctic coastal areas, winds will be primarily out of the north direction between 15 and 20 knots towards the Sound. Ice covering all locations, and easterly direction as you get towards the eastern Beaufort Sea. Looking at your Friday forecast, winds are not going to be as strong across the northwestern areas between 5 and 15 knots back towards the Kotzebue Sound area, and this is going to be mainly out of the east and south directions with a change in direction as you head across the Beaufort Sea area, 10 to 20 knots here out of the northwest and west.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.